Good morning, lovely to see everyone battling through to get here. So I'm going to talk to you about how we increase this engagement that John was talking about when the messages can be potentially triggering. So we're going to spend about 15 or so minutes just looking at the sort of psychology behind engagement to complement the workshop that's going to run later on this afternoon. A little bit about myself just to set the scene before we start. So I'm a sustainability building health consultant, a multi-award winning certified carbon literacy trainer, and that was my introduction to the wonderful world of the Midlands Parks Forum, because a couple of members have become carbon literacy certified through that course run by Historic England, and I'll talk a little bit more about that a bit later on. I'm a mental health first aider, water literate, which if you haven't seen, the pilot programs are just starting now, and I would strongly encourage all of you to have a look at that, particularly with the work that you're doing, very, very important. I'm also the environment and real estate trustee at Grade 2 Star listed Nottingham Playhouse. My background's actually in heritage. With my other hat on, I'm a landlord of 40,000 square foot Grade 2 listed building, so heritage runs through my body, and I'm ashamed to say that until I was aware of Midlands Park Forum, I wasn't aware of the incredible work and the heritage that goes on in parks as well. So it's wonderful to be involved in your world now. Spenbeck is a sustainability consultancy that predominantly offers in-house support consulting over a wide range of support areas, and also a wide range of bespoke and off-the-shelf training, particularly in the world of engagement and climate wellbeing. But we also do work on decarbonising heritage buildings as well, and I very much enjoy working with those who have parkland as well as buildings. But before we start to really get into the engagement side of things, what I'd like you to do is just take a moment. If you feel comfortable to do so, close your eyes. Hopefully it won't make you go to sleep. But close your eyes and think. When I say the word climate change, I'd like you to picture, if you can, what that means to you. What can you see? What's happening in that picture? What activities are going on? What are the colours? What are the sounds? And when you've got that picture firmly in your mind, or you're able to describe it to yourself, now think about how that makes you feel. Okay, thank you for that. So what's important when we're thinking about trying to get engagement across all our stakeholders, be they colleagues, volunteers, local authorities, partners, suppliers, it's really important that we understand what that engagement is going to do, how they're going to react to that. And so our focus for this session is on climate anxiety. Climate anxiety can be defined in different ways, so it's really important, so we understand that subjectivity, that we're all sharing the same definition. So it's generally agreed to be the sense of fear, worry or tension linked to climate change. That's what we mean by anxiety. But we also do have eco-anxiety that comes up quite a lot in these conversations, and that's that range of negative emotions in all these different ways in response to climate crisis and other environmental issues. So sometimes when you hear climate anxiety, they're talking just about climate change. Eco-anxiety is all the environmental issues. And there's a range of prompts, a range of contexts that really drive climate anxiety in people. Firstly, personal experience. Just noticed my daughter just sent me flooding pictures from Nottingham, which is where I'm from, where people were wading almost calf deep in the traditional flooding hotspot that we have. Nothing happens, but it really does impact on people's mental health and their understanding in response to climate change. 20% of participants who've been flooded are diagnosed with probable depression when we consider the mental impact of those who are affected by flooding. 28% were found in research to have probable anxiety, and 36% had probable PTSD 1 year on from doing the research from the flooding event. So people who are increasingly impacted themselves by climate change are going to become more anxious about it. Then we also have those who are unfortunately already suffering from a mental illness such as anxiety and depression. How do they feel? Well, that anxiety, that concern, the depression that they may already have embedded anyway, is exacerbated by the impacts of climate change, particularly the increasing temperatures. Mortality amongst people with mental illness has been shown to be higher, and also psychiatric symptoms that people present are shown to become intensified if they're nursed in hot buildings. So again, they're already seeing the impacts of climate change, and it's impacting and making worse how they're suffering. And then we have this concept called intergenerational theft, and this is the one that really gets to me the most. How are youngsters feeling? How are youngsters going to be engaged in our parks and green spaces when we're trying to engage them? Or how do they respond to that? Research shows that almost 80% of UK primary school children report climate worry. That's their baseline position when we're trying to engage them in this. When we are more specifically looking at Generation Z, so 16 to 25-year-olds, almost 60% say that they're extremely worried. 3/4 believe their future is frightening. Imagine that when you wake up almost every day thinking, gosh, what's my future going to look like? I'm terrified by it. Over 80% feel that humans have failed to take care of the planet, and more than half are powerless, angry, anxious, feel despair and betrayed. And it's the betrayed that I think is just gut-wrenching. So when we're looking to engage Gen Z, 16 to 25-year-olds, there's that background that we have to make sure we consider when we're trying to get them involved. But it's not just a young person's thing. The most recent stats from the Office of National Statistics asked what the level of worry was about climate change, how they felt impacted. And actually what astonished me when I saw it is when you look across the age range, over half of 50 to 69-year-olds, 70-year-olds and over are somewhat worried. So almost half of everyone you're engaging with has a level of anxiety and concern about climate change. It's not just when you look at very worried, a younger person's thing. So when you're thinking about your colleagues, your teams, your volunteers, please don't necessarily slip up to the media narrative that it is a young person's concern. There are a huge number of people across the age ranges, and we'll look at how we can navigate that a bit more in the workshop this afternoon. Just some fallout of that we have to expect: marginalisation, rumination, mental health concerns, absenteeism or presenteeism at work, be that volunteering with you, working with council, local authority colleagues and stakeholders. Just because you can't see it doesn't mean it's not there. We're generally British, we hide this, we pretend that we're fine, aren't we? We're always all fine. This is fabulous. So we're thinking about adapting climate change, move to net zero. We have to handle it in a way that manages people's mental health, okay? And we talk about this just transition, but that just transition can only work. The engagement in it can only be effective if we're taking on board where people are coming from a mental health perspective and how we're managing climate anxiety. Now, I can't talk about climate anxiety without talking about climate denial. And that is essentially the rejection of the idea that climate change is caused by humans. Or, because it is nuanced, that we humans are causing it, but it isn't a significant threat to either our welfare or our civilization. So those who present climate denial are maybe coming at it from slightly different aspects. And what I'd like you to do is have a think about a situation in your life. It could be recent, it could be when you were slightly younger. Any situation at all where you've kind of pretended that something isn't needing to be done. You're trying to block it out of your head for a little bit because you don't want to try and manage it. It might be a difficult work call, might be a difficult conversation, it might have been an assignment at uni or at school that you were pretending. Mine's my tax return. I'm doing that right now. I'm in denial that it needs to happen because I know it's there, I know I've got to do it, but I don't want to consider it, so I'm denying it. And that willful denial is what we have when we have, and this is blurry by the way, it's not your eyes on Wednesday morning, but I love the picture. This is the boiling frog syndrome. Has anyone come across that? Yeah, lovely. And we need to be really aware of this. This is the syndrome that says that if you put a frog in boiling hot water, please don't, it will jump straight out because it's going, are you crazy? That's really hot. It's going to kill me. Whereas if you put a frog in cold water and slowly increase the temperatures, doesn't notice. Well, it's a nice and warm and snug. Lovely. Until the point that it boils itself to death. And that's where we are with this willful denial. But what's really important for you to understand is that for an awful lot of people, not everybody, climate deniers are not fascist. They are not right-wing. They are not Trump supporters. What they are is terrified. Climate denial is a key manifestation of anxiety. Not for everybody, but again, when you're thinking about how you're engaging your various stakeholders, please do bear that in mind. Thinking externally as a final source of what drives climate anxiety, it's everywhere, isn't it? You know, the flooding messages that I've got from last night, it's on the news all the time, going to boil to death. You know, we've got wildfires here, we've got winds here, we've got torrential rain, we've got pests coming. It's coming at us from every angle. It's really difficult to think about climate change without having a bit of anxiety at any level. But as we've seen, all these different triggers that make people really concerned, but they're not necessarily presenting it, that form complete barriers to effective engagement. So one more time, please, I'd like you to just close your eyes, or look forward if you feel comfortable, and think about the happiest place you have that's a park or a green space. It can be anywhere in the world, you might not have visited it, but again, picture that place. What are the colours? What are the sounds? What's going on in there? Are there people frolicking? Are there birds flying? What can you hear? And then once again, what does it feel like? What emotions does that drive in you? Thank you. These parks and green spaces, as you know, are uniquely positioned to help with climate anxiety, but also with that engagement piece. 70% of all adults agree that being close to nature improves their mood, and almost half say it helps them cope with stress. But the key point that comes out of the research is how people notice nature. It's not simply about just being there, it's how we can direct them to become more involved, be more aware of the natural world around them, so they reinforce that connection that we have with it. So how do we do that? Well, there are immediate mental health benefits to being in a park or a green space. Forest bathing, it's my absolute favourite. And I love, you can tell the groups who love it and don't think it's insane, and others who think it's a bit weird. But forest bathing is wonderful. But again, when we're getting people to forest bathe, and I know a few parks actually signpost it, it's not just walking around going, oh, that looks pretty. You know, feeling the trees, feeling the differences in the bark. What do they look like? What do they smell like? What do they sound like when the wind rustles through the leaves? Noticing those differences is really important. Grounding, anyone's come across it, it's sometimes called earthing, you know, getting people to stand barefoot, really reconnect with nature, understand our role in it and why it's so important that we need to do what we can to mitigate the human impacts of climate change. Then, as John was talking about, that visible climate action, we're actually able in our parks and green spaces to demonstrate what people can do. And sometimes people do need a bit of a helping hand to recognise that. The fact that the trees provide so much shade, and you know, when we see particularly green parks in urban areas, reducing that heat island is really important for those who don't have their own spaces of their own as we move towards even more apartment blocks, to evidence the role of trees in providing that cover and that respite. How they have a role in flood storage, how they support biodiversity, the ecosystem that we are utterly destroying. We've got visible, tangible results here that we can show. And I want to say in this is the psychology of our echo chamber is really strong. Please don't think that normal people out there get that, because actually a lot of them don't, or they need reminding of that. So the visible action is really important. The sites for resilience, and I think the citizen science point you were talking about the health, the tree health surveys, get people involved in the tree health surveys, in biodiversity audits, earthworm audits, those sorts of things. Actually get in down and dirty is really key to getting people involved and see how we can put a stop or at least a slowdown on climate change. And through that, it's giving people agency, giving them permission, giving them strength to be able to feel that they can make a difference and hopefully mitigate that anxiety. But again, not all of these are going to work for everybody. It's subjective, so some will be triggered and have anxiety triggered by some of these. So principles for non-triggering engagement: validate people's feelings, however they're feeling. It's important to acknowledge that range with the engagement offers that you have. Offer agency, offer that power with small visible actions that are tangible to people. They can see what they're doing and they can share that with colleagues and friends. Be explicit in that connection. between nature and well-being. Again, not everybody gets that. They feel it, but they don't necessarily know why. So do be explicit on that. Make it that community feel. People are feeling increasingly isolated, particularly if they are suffering from climate anxiety. So it's really important to bring everybody together and make people feel less isolated. And that inclusion in practical, we need to make it as diverse as possible. So for all ranges of demographics and abilities to be able to come and access parks so that they don't feel that isolation that does run so strongly with climate anxiety. Operational changes, John's touched on quite a few, but sort of multi-benefit planting is really important as well, just to demonstrate how people can take that at home. What are you doing to plant for climate change, for different sensory experiences? The quiet zones for decompression people will need. And be explicit again in those so that people know they've got that quiet place for meditation. Training staff, any mental health first aiders you have here, or if you can do that so that you can bring that concern about climate anxiety and that consciousness into what you're doing. And then again, thinking about demographics, how can you bring all ages together to feel that they're making a difference? And with everything, what's really important is that you measure what you're doing so you can see how well you're doing and what areas you need to improve on. Participation, repeat attendance surveys, well-being surveys, obviously all of these need to be anonymous if possible so people feel completely comfortable about sharing how they're honestly feeling with you. And the more that you can measure your success, the more you can focus on really optimising that engagement and trying to mitigate people's climate anxiety. And so this is our sustainability sandwich. We normally do it when people are feeling really hungry by accident, but I don't think people's tummies are rumbling quite yet. And the point is, for the visual people in the room, is that when we think about sustainability, we think about climate action, we tend to go for that operational ingredients bit in the middle. And what we tend to forget is how important our governance and our culture is to provide the structure to make that happen. But the key ingredient to our sandwich, be it mayonnaise, melted cheese, however you like your sandwich put together, is that engagement bit, the glue that holds everything you do together, what will make the key difference between success, not quite success, in everything that you're trying to do through your parks and green spaces. So that's me finished. As I say, I'll be running one of the workshops on engagement, a lot more practical steps at how to do it. If you're not able to join me, I just want to say now briefly before I finish, as I mentioned at the beginning, Historic England runs the Heritage for Carbon literacy training. It is fully funded. We are delivering sessions specifically for local authorities in councils, and we just started those. There are new dates coming for the spring. So if anyone is interested in that, please do connect with me. That's my QR, that's my email address, and I'll be able to put you in touch. But heads up, it'll be me delivering it. So if you don't want that, then please don't sign up. But thank you so much. It's been lovely to see so many of you here today, and I look forward to seeing some of you later in the workshops. Thank you.